welcome everybody to this morning, the first session of Innovation Week YYC. We're going to have a nice little chat, and I've got two other friends that have to come on stage with me, so please, Shahoon and Purvaja, come on. So to kick things off, we're going to be half pessimistic and half optimistic. Right now we're talking about disruption and turbulence and headwinds and shifting sands, but we're also talking about resiliency and optimism and self-determination when it comes to entrepreneurship. And so today's panel, our first chat, is to give you a little bit of insight from some of our colleagues. So I'll let Shahoon and Purvaja introduce themselves in a minute. But this is about future-proofing your startup. How is emerging tech, how are the shifting sands geopolitically, socially, economically, how are they impacting the way founders are tackling their entrepreneurial journey? How are they tackling pivoting on their startup and their growth and their scaling? And so we'll share a lot of insights. We're going to try and make this as interactive as possible. I realize there's a lot of empty seats in the middle, but all throughout the 40 minutes that we have together, I will ask you, if you've got questions, raise your hand, and we'll gladly have you ask your question to the panel members, just to make this a little bit more engaging and interactive. Shout out to Art for the T-shirt. Thank my friend. And good to see many familiar faces in the crowd, including hi, Emil. So let's first do a quick intro. Make sure your mics are working. So we'll start with Purvaja.
Hi. Hi everyone, my name is Purvaja Soochit. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Binoloop. It's a Calgary-based AI startup that started in 2023 with a focus in building AI solution for government, focused on regulatory automation.
Hello. Is it good? Oh, okay, there we go. Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Shahoon, the founding director of investments for Row Ventures. We're a student-led venture capital fund backing student founders.
That was quick. So when we talk about emerging tech and how it is shaping and influencing and worrying investors, founders, funders, what we want to do today is kind of dig into a little bit the perceptions and the views and the insights that you've had, both from an early stage student-run, student-led investment firm, but also Purvaja in terms of, you've been around for a few years with Binoloop, so I realize it's very important that we know how to pronounce startup names very well, so it's Binoloop, and Purvaja will tell you a little bit about where that name came from. I also want to make sure that I recognize Platform Calgary and the team who put on a fantastic planning committee and organizing committee. University of Calgary is the presenting sponsor this year, so we're really wonderfully pleased to be able to partner with the Platform Calgary and all of the actors that are in this amazing community. So let's start a little bit, Purvaja, with your journey. You started as an actuarial sciences student turned entrepreneur. That's pretty amazing. So tell us a little bit about your journey.
Sounds good. Started at U of A, and then eventually moved to U of C to finish my actuarial degree in Calgary. Even growing up, I was very entrepreneurial. Didn't know the concept then, didn't know about startup, but I was always trying to fix a problem and spinning up businesses or ways to address a problem. And when I joined the university, one of the classes that I took was Entrepreneurship 201, when I was introduced to the concept of startups and really learned what a startup does. And I was pretty hooked, but my degree was very non-entrepreneurial. I spent a couple years in management consulting. I got to work with a lot of big enterprises in town, and implement large solutions. But I always knew at the back of my mind that I wanted to be a founder, and I have the interest and to do that and the passion. So a couple years ago, about 4 years ago, I joined a startup that was growing out of Australia to build their North American presence. I learned how to run a startup and how to sell, etc. Did that for 2 years, and as the generative AI boom started, one of my interests very close to me was, how do we fix the manual work in regulatory companies like oil and gas, mining? And my parents, they worked in government their whole life, and I did not enjoy hearing how much manual work there is in government. So, for us, when we started Binoloop 2 years ago, one of the key focus was how can we leverage generative AI to really address manual work in regulation-heavy industries like oil and gas, mining, and government. And in the last 2 years, we've been heavily focused in government, first in federal, and then moved to state and local.
So no B2B, no B2C, you went straight to B2G. So we'll dig a little bit into that, because that's probably the toughest nut to crack in Canada or around the world. So thanks for that. Shahoon, Front Row Ventures, an idea and a concept born in Montreal that is slowly growing tentacles across the country, and you've got a node in British Columbia that was established about 2 years ago, and now firmly established and ramping up activities here in Alberta. So tell us a little bit about, apropos, the theme this week for Innovation Week is why Calgary. So Shahoon, why Calgary and why Alberta?
Yeah, so I remember speaking to our ops lead, I think it was December last year, when he was just scouting out the ecosystem to see how things were. And I remember meeting with him before I even joined Front Row, and he was telling me about how, honestly, across Canada, and I think North America as well, you see the headlines of Alberta being one of the fastest growing tech ecosystems. And so for Front Row Ventures, seeing all the universities also get on board, things like the Hunter Hub, things like the E-Hub at the U of A, these things existed and they were growing really fast. And so for Front Row Ventures, it was a no-brainer to expand into Alberta. I remember speaking to our ops lead, our management. They even said that we should have probably moved into Alberta before BC, but yeah,
yes,
didn't work out that way. But yeah, super happy to be here and be part of the energy in Alberta. Both in Calgary and Edmonton as well. So both the cities have this energy about them that we're super passionate about tech, super passionate about building cool things. And yeah, Front Row is super happy to be here.
Thanks for that, Shahoon. Purvaja, generative AI 2 years ago was really not on everybody's lips and tongue. So tell us a little bit about being an early adopter, an early entrepreneur journey using generative AI in a rather challenging field.
Yeah, it was definitely a roller coaster. When we started Binoloop, just a little bit backstory, in 2023, week 1 of starting Binoloop, we got an opportunity to pitch to the US Defense for a generative AI procurement tool. ChatGPT was very new back then, available publicly, and there was very little research papers or resources available on how to leverage this at scale at an enterprise level, especially for a defense organization. I think for us, both me and my co-founder, we have background in management consulting, and that's the one thing we could leverage in those situations is, how do you go with a very big unknown and still try to tackle and fix the problem. So we started small. We tried to build an MVP with what we knew and what we had, and really understood the risk and gaps there, and then kept building from there. And since 2023, the pace of innovation, the maturity of the AI models, and the iteration has shortened significantly. So it's not months, it's weeks, and sometimes days. So every day there is something new in generative AI. So the the success for us was really to be able to adapt and change as things move in the commercial models and the open source models. But yeah, in 2023, it was very hard to implement something enterprise grade. And we just started very small with what we had available and went up from there.
Thanks for that. Last week, there was a conference in Montreal called RevStart, and there's a panel of investors, including Innovia and Georgian. And one of the panelists said that as a founder and as an entrepreneur, right now it's terrifying that what AI is doing in terms of competition, growth, speed, which you just talked about. So my question to you, Shahoon, is how does Front Row Venture, who works with very early emerging founders, how do you advise and shape and mentor those really promising entrepreneurs who are now facing a huge field of competition wherever they're going to go?
Well, that's quite a question. So one thing about Front Row is that it's often students helping students. I myself am a student. Our founders are all students. And so it's kind of like the blind leading the blind, so to speak. But I think in terms of mentorship, what goes a long way is kind of being able to sell your dream. And so because we're coming in super early, we're often investing in companies that are pre-revenue, kind of at that valley of death stage. And at that point, you need to convince other investors, convince future partners and customers that your dream is something that is going to be the future, it's going to be big, it's going to be amazing. And so just from student to student, it's often just being able to talk about communication and talk about being able to sell your dreams to partners, to customers, to others. And yeah, that's really the best we can do. And then along the way, trying to help make the connections that might help speed up your traction at the early stage. And that can look like setting up investor calls, that can look like connecting them to future partners, customers. And so yeah, that's about it. That's all we can really do.
And does Front Row need or interested or thinking about changing its investment thesis at all, given how things are accelerating so quickly around emerging tech?
Investment thesis. So our thesis has always been to back the best first. And I believe that based on the performance on our portfolio companies and seeing where our founders end up over the past 7 years we've been investing, I think it's a thesis that it's worked in the past and is continuing to work. And honestly, I think if anything, we're going to be doubling down on that thesis and continuing to find the best student founders we can in Canada and backing them, ideally, like being the first check into their companies.
Thanks for that, Shahoon. And of course, one of the words I wrote down is, we're talking about emerging tech and the rapidly growing field of AI and data and quantum and digital currencies. But the word humanity always has to stick around. And so, no matter how tech-enabled or tech-focused or tech-dependent your startup is, at the end of the day, as you were mentioning, a lot of it has to do with relationships and building those trust and confidence relationships. So Purvaja, how do you, as one of the two leads and founders for Binoloop, how do you not let the technology get ahead of you in terms of building relationships and building trust and building your client base and building your LOI pool and your pipeline?
Yeah, and for us it's very interesting because we are very focused on B2G, and AI is not a friendly word in that space for many governments. So we learned from our mistakes, and one of the things that we do now that we were not doing at the start is we don't mention AI. We don't have AI in our name. Binoloop was selected so that we didn't have Binoloop AI. And where we really start a conversation with our clients or potential client is where the bottleneck is and how can we help you, whether it's automation, whether it's AI, we don't care what it is in the background, but it's the outcome and the value that we are creating that is attracting them to continue the conversation with us. So really, we look at AI as an enabler rather than the solution that we are bringing. Before generative AI, what we were building is not possible because of the vast amount of regulation, the length of those regulation, and how fast they change. You could not build rule-based system that could adapt to those. So for us, it's great to leverage a new technology that could not be leveraged before. But yeah, in building those partnerships for us, for the industry that we are in, it was very important to focus on how can we create value with your existing team. We're not replacing, humans, and we've built our solution, all our systems with human in the loop. So the SMEs and the workers are always in control, and we are not a decision engine. We are a decision assistant engine. So,
Thanks for that. So you mentioned that you left the University of Calgary and graduated before the Hunter Hub for Entrepreneurial Thinking was there. Many of you in the room were at Web Summit in Vancouver just a few months ago this summer. And for those of you who were there, half of the room were AI evangelists and the other half were AI doomsayers. So emerging technology is caught in this interzone that, it's either going to be a great solution or it's going to be a great problem for humanity and for society. So one of the challenges we're thinking about at the Hunter Hub is, what do we need to do to help our undergraduates, graduates, recent alumni who are coming to us to get the good advice, good support, good programs? So I'm looking to both of you to say, what should programs that are supporting entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial thinking at the very earliest stages, what should we be thinking about around bringing AI into our curriculum, into our training, and into our professional development for our community? Maybe Shahoon can start.
Yeah, I think we should. So I know myself, my background is in STEM, so I spent, I think, 5 years so far, past 5 years in biomedical research, and I have zero formal training in AI or computer sciences. And growing up, I would always hear that computer sciences is going to become a necessity to learn, and with this AI boom, it's almost becoming mandatory if you want to be in this kind of industry. And so, if I were to, I'm speaking to Guy right now, but if I were speaking to Peter Keith at the HUB as well, I would tell them that I think we do need some kind of programming around AI because it is a very useful tool, and I don't think it's going to be going anywhere anytime soon as well. So I think those kinds of resources would be very valuable to student founders.
Thanks, Shahoon. Same question.
and I think on my end, I would say two things I wish I had if I was still in school. One is mentorship from actual startup founders or people who's had a startup before. It's great to have the confidence and hear it from someone who's done it, and maybe it's from the same degree as you, or so that it's possible. And then the second one is embedding the use of AI in events or even in programs, because you won't know until you try. And like I said, the pace is changing so much. Even in the last month, the amount of new versions of GPT, Gemini that came out, Claude, if you don't try, you'll be the gap would be so big that, for you to get started and get good at it, it will be a bigger jump. So I think for us, one of the great things at Binoloop that we've done the last 2 years since we started is we've always had interns, summer interns, from around Canada that interned with us. And every time they wrap up their internship, one of the great feedback we got 2 years in a row now was, I did not know I could use that much AI in my day-to-day. Because one of the things we do, depending if they're in marketing or in machine learning or operation, we force them to test and experiment with tools that are on the market to automate their daily task. So we know they are not expert as interns, but we let them try, we teach them how to use AI, how to embed it in a process, and they finish their internship, and most of them, one of the feedback that they give us was, I'm so happy I've tried so many things. Now I know what to use and what not to use as I go back to school and into the world of work.
Thanks for that, Purvaja. At the Hunter Hub, we use 4 words to describe kind of what we do, and we use the words ignite, inspire, empower, and equip. And it seems that that's exactly what you do with students who are interning and who leave much better prepared and equipped to tackle the world. If you might have seen or read of a Leaders Fund recent study that was done with Spectre about how Canadian founders are leaving in significant numbers to places outside the country, and when they do, they're extremely successful. In fact, more successful than founders in their home country when you compare them. Yet, we see RBC just released its State of Entrepreneurship 2025 report, where the enthusiasm and the optimism for entrepreneurs is sky high. It's never been higher than it was pre-pandemic 2017. Abacus Data did some work with Yahoo Canada just for Canada Small Business Week a few weeks ago. Some of the stats are pretty interesting. 70% of entrepreneurs are doing it because it's who they are. 72% were successfully adapted to the changing conditions locally and globally. 73% are optimistic. So it's interesting that we're living in kind of this dichotomous world where, we're seeing a lot of negativity and a lot of concern and worry, yet entrepreneurs by and large are extremely positive and extremely hopeful for the future. So how do you reconcile the fact that, depending on the study that you read one day or one afternoon, you might have a very different view of the entrepreneurial journey. So Shahoon, what do you say to prospective investment ready student startups who are really concerned about what the future holds for them?
Well, first thing that I would say is, to be an outlier. Stats do represent the majority, but that doesn't mean that has to be you. And if you're resourceful enough, if you work hard enough, there are opportunities out there that you can take advantage of to help propel your startup forward. And so entrepreneurship, it is a industry, but it's also a mindset of being resourceful, being thrifty, and coming out on top when the odds are stacked against you. And so things like Front Row Ventures, things like the Hunter Hub, there's various resources out there for students, for alumni, that we can take advantage of through things like a simple cold email that can help provide you returns that can really propel you forward. So yeah, be an outlier.
Thanks, Shahoon. So I'll ask you, why Calgary? Why are you here and why are you growing here? And how are you growing here?
Very interesting question. Calgary's home. It's been home for more than 10 years now. I went to UFC. I fell in love with the city. I really like the mountains, and I enjoy living here and not in a big city, not too big city. So that's, I think, my personality. But also, why set up our company in Calgary? I think when we started in 2023, there was this start of this boom of startup ecosystem here in Calgary. Having the Platform Calgary as a resource was one of the key decisions for us to, we can be here, we can work from here if we wanted to, so we can set up a company here. So those were elements of our decision. And in the last 2 years, we've worked primarily international, but we've built a team across Canada, and we've continued to find success here in Calgary, both financially and with our personal lives. We can afford to be a founder and live in Calgary, live a good life in Calgary. So I think for us, it's a personal and professional both.
Thanks, Purvaja. I wrote a piece just a week and a half ago in the Hill Times policy briefing on innovation, and I talked about culture, I talked about conviction or confidence, and then I talked about community. And Shahoon, you talked about community in one of your earlier answers. Those are the 3 secret ingredients here in Calgary, and why Calgary. And I encourage you to come back this afternoon at about 3 o'clock, where Deborah Yedlin, Jen Lucier, Parham, and I are going to have a chat about why Calgary and what's so unique about Calgary. Because I think when you're looking at numbers and trends and indicators, we're kind of bucking the national trend that are either neutral or downward over the last year or so. So why is that? Well, first, is that the case? And so understanding, the data and what's actually happening on the ground here in Calgary is really critical. But could you talk a little bit about how FRV builds community?
Yeah, so with FRV being present in the ecosystem, whichever ecosystem we're operating in, we kind of act like a glue that often facilitates a lot of partnerships. So for example, I believe a couple months back, we co-hosted an event with both Startup TNT and the eHub, bringing those two entities together through a friendly collaboration, and just having our scouts at the institutes, at going to various events. We help lubricate sort of the gears of the tech industry in whatever province we're operating in. And so that can look like partnerships, that can look like conversations, that can look like connecting founders to other investors. So it's really that cheat code that helps boost the ecosystem that we're operating in.
Okay, so cheat codes. I'm turning myself to the audience now, and if anybody has a burning question or something they'd like to ask either Purvaja or Shahoon, I'm going to give you an opportunity now or to start thinking about it, because I'll be coming back to you in a second, and we'll be throwing the big soft cube as soon as somebody raises their hand. We've got a question. Oh, of course, the question's over there.
Of course.
Yeah.
Can we pass this down? Thank you.
Awesome.
If you could tell your name, affiliation, question, thanks.
Yeah, it's it's a mic. Cool. There you go. Sorry, what was it you wanted me to say beside name and
Name, affiliation, and then question. Thanks.
Sure. Chris Reeder from Conversant Teamwear. Question is for Shahoon. He had mentioned about specifically with student-led startups. So just wondering if that is 100% that's all you do, or if you would choose at earlier stage, and if so, why student-led specifically? What characteristics and traits are leading you for that direction?
So why students in particular? So our fund was started 7 years ago by 3 pretty extraordinary individuals, but the fund was originally modeled off of a fund in the US called the Dorm Room Fund, which is essentially, it was started, I believe, at Harvard, don't quote me on that, but the idea was that there's really cool people in your residency buildings, really cool people in your classrooms that you want to meet and you want to learn about what they're building. And typically at that stage, there's a high return on investment when you're backing them. And so typically these kinds of founders, they're very resourceful, they're very driven and ambitious, and that really shows in various ways. And so we want to back them at the earliest stage when they need it the most. And so qualities that we look for, we want to look for things like your ability to take feedback, your ability to be resourceful, your own passion for the company and the problem that you're trying to solve. Those are things that we're looking for.
Other questions from the audience? Oh.
I have to yell in it? Okay. Can you still see me? My question is for Purvaja. Can you tell us a little bit about tips and tricks in working with government, and if you had any advice for entrepreneurs and how, if they're thinking about taking that path, what that might look like?
Thank you. That's a great question. I think in the last year we had a lot of roller coaster, learning how to work with government. I do not have any prior knowledge of selling or working with government, so we've learned the hard way. I think one of the best lessons learned for us was try to find the jurisdictions, like we're selling to local, state and local government, So trying to understand which jurisdiction is technology forward and leaning towards pilots or early adoption makes such a big difference in the conversations you have with them early on, rather than targeting, everyone around you or everyone in a certain area that may not be ready to have those discussion. So now we are laser focused on, states or municipalities that's voiced that they are actively looking into AI solution or actively looking into permitting solution, and those have been very helpful for us to have better outcomes in our conversation.
Thanks for that. Shahoon, a question for you about smoke and mirrors. Because we have a lot of entrepreneurs who come who have great ideas, who are talking AI and talk Gen AI, agentic AI. And how does Front Row Ventures separate the true substantive, solid early startup from the ones that are, let's say, a little bit smoke and mirrors?
Yeah, that's a great question. So as investors, especially at the very early stage, we have all these data points that could be a positive signal or it could be a negative signal. And so it can often be quite challenging to understand what the data point you're looking at is, if it's a positive thing or if it's a negative thing. So for us, I think a big part of it is mentorship. So one of the things that we do during the semester is we pair our students up with a seasoned VC that's operating at one of the venture capital firms out here in Alberta. And that mentorship can often help provide some added knowledge that can help you decipher whether the data point you're looking at is a positive or negative thing. We also try to discuss as a group, so a lot of that teamwork where someone who has an engineering background, who knows the industry very, very well, can help look at the deal that you're looking at and interpret whether that data point is positive or negative. But yeah, just trying to be open to learning, trying to collaborate with the team to help mitigate some of those risks is kind of what we have to do.
Thanks for that. And on the flip side, Purvaja, there are a lot of customers who really don't know what their use case is for AI, but they know they need it. And so how do you help navigate and onboard potential customers, especially if you're in the B2C or B2G space, where the in-house expertise around emerging technology may not be particularly strong, and where they're relying on you as the startup or the founder or the scale-up to guide them in that process?
Yeah, I think for us, every single client we had who either did an RFP with us or reached out to us had an idea in mind or a wish list that they thought they wanted. And when we went through our process, we usually do a discovery session with them and we force them to do it. Because again, coming back to the question, they think they know what they want. And when we show them what's possible and some of the use case that they're thinking is not even possible with where AI is at today. A lot of times like, I wish AI could do X, Y, Z, but it's not really possible. So we could, overpromise and underdeliver, or we can tell them, this is what's possible today with technologies available, or this is what's not possible. So I think for us, a way that we've been able to mitigate those scope risk was to force those discovery session where we map out their pain points. We get AI out of the equation, and we really try to understand what are the problems they're trying to solve, and then following up to that, show them based on this problem, this is not even an AI candidate. Like, you can fix this today based on basic automation, or these are excellent candidates for AI, and we've had good successes with that approach, with them getting the value that they were looking for, but maybe not phrasing it properly or listing it properly, and us not getting in the weeds of scope creep and trying to build something for the client that is not possible.
And as a follow-up, how do you compete in that space against as we were talking before our session, against the big four consulting firms who will come in and have big street cred big plans, great slide decks, and some expertise. How do you compete against those behemoths?
I think in general, it's very difficult to compete with large organizations because they have more resources, more capital, and then more time. Because a lot of time, trying to work with a startup, the enemy of startups are, oh, you need to be in business for 2 years or 10 years to be able for us to do business with you. Which, as a startup, you're in early stage, you don't have 2 years or you don't have 4 years of existence to fulfill those compliance. But one of the things we do to be able to become competitive is, we are very agile, so we can spin up a prototype for a client in 1 week. It's not, a production level prototype, but we can show them what's possible. And then the second piece is really try to hone in on the area that we're good at. So we are trying to focus our research and our expertise on regulation, LLM, understanding regulation with LLM, and we're trying to become the best at it. And yes, you can go to a consulting company that will do great, but it's very broad and it's not very focused on this very specific problem. And we try to publish research papers, white papers on this to show that we've done strides in improving that or addressing that. And that's, for us, the only way we found that's working right now. Yeah.
Thanks. Kim, get ready to throw that blue cube again. Questions from the audience?
Hi, my name is Pachalo. I am the owner of the startup called Catch. My question is going to Purvaja. I've read somewhere that the adoption rate of AI in Canada is much slower vis-a-vis the US and other countries, especially for SMEs. What's your observation, and what should we do to speed that up? Thank you.
Sorry, just want to reiterate the question. So the question is, there's more AI SMEs in Canada than there is elsewhere. A low adoption rate. Okay. Yeah, I believe it's true in certain areas. Again, for us, we are very focused in one industry. Where we found, lower adoption in Canada is very early stage when we are trying to prove something that doesn't exist on the market or hasn't been adopted somewhere else. There's no competitor. We found that, in Canada, our clients or our conversations that we had, they're a little bit more risk adverse. They won't adopt something that doesn't have a proven success rate. Whereas on the other side of the border, the risk is, tolerance is higher. So they're willing to test just to be the first one to get it. So our approach right now is to get enough traction in the US to bring it back to Canada and get the traction here.
And what's your experience, given that you've spent a lot of time in Australia, in the States, and overseas on trade missions? What's your experience in comparing and contrasting the Canadian marketplace versus foreign marketplaces?
I think, looking at a couple regions, I've had the chance to be in Europe and Australia this year with the Canadian government and working a lot with the US government. Definitely, Canada has a very strong talent pool of AI experts, AI researchers. Haven't seen that in other regions. And unfortunately, there is a lot of them that's leaving to those regions to start a startup or be at a company there. But in terms of adoption or startups, I found a way more early stage startup here in Canada and US compared to Australia and France, for example, just because of the regulations and the landscape there is, they are starting to grow, but they are not at the stage of North America yet. But definitely Canada is a leader, but I would say a little bit behind compared to the US, but getting there, and I think trying to retain our startups ecosystem here and traction here would definitely help us get up there with the US.
Thanks, Purvaja. We've got a question up here.
Yeah. Okay. Hi, this is Abhi, no affiliation AI engineer. My question is to Purvaja. Thank you so much for sharing the story. Very inspirational. My question is, what about Gen AI is, like useful for the customers compared to like traditional ML approaches?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. I think, like I mentioned before, generative AI is one tool in your toolbox, right? When we go to a customer and we ask them, how can we help them, and trying to see if our existing solutions can help them or they are trying to find something new, the one thing we try to do, like I said, is remove AI from the equation and really try to deep dive into their problem. Like what it is they are facing, what is their current process, how can we fix it if we are the ones to fix it? And there are some problems that can be fixed with traditional machine learning. Like you don't need generative AI for that. And there are problems that generative AI is a great way to get a solution fast. So I think it really depends on what type of problem you're solving. And it can be a mix of both, right? Like predictive maintenance, for example, like in Calgary, has been around and machine learning has solved it. And you can put generative AI to it and it will give you some incremental ROI, but it's been solved with traditional machine learning. So I think it's not about is your AI solution generative AI, but are you getting the value that you're trying to get out of automating it, whether it's RPA, whether it's machine learning or generative AI. That's just a under the hood question.
So I see that we're getting close to time. I do have two more questions I want to pose to my two amazing panelists. Tomorrow, I think there's a little document being tabled at 4 Eastern Time called the federal budget. If you had 2 minutes with the Prime Minister Carney and with Minister of Finance François-Philippe Champagne, what would you tell them that you'd like to see in tomorrow's budget?
Right, so definitely underqualified to answer that question. Given that it is Innovation Week, I'm representing a VC fund, I would say to keep putting money back into the tech ecosystem to help bolster this industry in Canada, because we have a lot of talent here that just needs more nurturing. And yeah, that'll, I think, help improve the outlook for Canadians and young entrepreneurs.
Thanks, Shahoon. And Purvaja?
I think for me, again, being focused on selling to the government, one of my pain points would be, like how do we have a lot of investment in AI in the last year already from the federal government and local government as well. But how do we repurpose or have new investment come in that really helps operationalize this startup, either by giving them funded pilots within enterprises or government, but not just mentorship or support, but then the biggest problem of an early stage startup is traction. If people in Canada are not buying the tool and they have to go to the US or to Europe to sell their solution, chances they will stay there. So how do we keep our talent here in Canada, and by creating programs that help them get the traction locally?
Traction, scaling, preserving our intellectual property assets in the country. You know that the Canadian Council of Innovators has been long a champion of strategic procurement. We had a long, nice chat about that before our panel today. Maybe one last round for questions from the audience before I ask my final question. Yes, we've got a question here.
Oh, perfect. Oh, I see. So sorry. Do you do it?
No choice.
All right. Yeah, I was just curious.
Name and affiliation, please.
I have no affiliation. I'm an independent researcher. My name is Angelsia, and Purvaja, I have a question for you, and Shahoon maybe as well. How would you build a team? How have you built it? What's retention like? How do you expect maturity for it?
Yeah, I can get started. We've had a lot of learnings along the way, if I can put it nicely. I think we've built a team with who we thought we wanted to be like startup-like, quick to adapt, especially that we started with a lot of unknowns at the very beginning of the startup. We didn't know what we were building or what we would be adapting to, so we wanted people that had either deep research in that space or entrepreneurial spirit that they can adapt and change direction as we change. But I think the landscape of building a team in a startup has drastically changed over the last 6 months or 1 year. When we started Binoloop, we were working with federal government. One of the first question was, how many people is on your team? That was first week of incorporation. We were two founders. And they're like, you cannot have less than 5, otherwise you're too risky. So we had to go and hire people to build with us and to deliver this product. But I think now, if I had to redo it again and start from scratch, I don't think you need a large team to scale now. Like the availability of AI tools that could assist you to build and scale your solution, you don't need a large team. Once you've validated and you've got your product market fit, yeah, you can grow the team. But traditionally, when I started in 2023, you had to have a developer, an AI engineer, and et cetera, et cetera. I'm not a technical founder. I don't code, but I've built a solution for one of my clients this weekend with 6 agents that is mimicking all the developers I have on my team because they were fully loaded on their work, so I could not bother them. So I was able to build something that would take them 2 weeks to build in the weekend and show it to my client in a couple days. So I think trying to build a team, the barrier is becoming lower, and you're able to do much more with much less, and then grow the team once you've had the validation that you need from the market.
Just to add to that, so for me, it's a very different context because I manage a team of 13 student venture capitalists, so it's quite a large team. So there's that. But for me, one of the most important things when I was recruiting them was keeping diversity top of mind, because we're a group of students with a very minimal experience in this industry in many ways. How we make up for that is trying to hire based on diversity of perspective. So that can look like hiring people from various different professional backgrounds. That can be people from finance, people from STEM, people from wherever, and that helps kind of fill in the gaps. But also on top of that, trying to make sure people from various walks of life are represented, people are bringing various diverse perspectives, and keeping that top of mind also helps build a very well-rounded team.
So as we finish, I'm going to start a sentence and you're going to finish it for me. The best way to future-proof your startup is?
The best way to future-proof your startup is to get started today. There is so many people that I speak with that have ideas and they want to get started, but there's nothing preventing them from getting started. The barrier to being a founder is so low today. You can start in your room and you don't need to be technical, you don't need to be functional, you can just get started, and there is no excuse for not giving your idea a try, however small or big it is. So I think it's starting as early as possible.
I love that, because the University of Calgary is all about starting something. Shahoon?
I think it's the best way to future-proof your startup is to be willing to learn and to be open-minded. And so, in my opinion, what that looks like is founders should be willing to learn about the ecosystem and the markets that they're looking to break into. So that could be learning about what your ideal customer would be like, what headwinds or tailwinds are in the markets, having conversations with experts that may or may not be you or people on your team, and just being open to changing things and pivoting when things aren't looking the best for you and your startup.
On that note, I think we should thank Purvaja and Shahoon for some
Thank you.
really good insights this morning.